Welcome to Spruce Grove Alliance Church, your home.
Today we're doing something different. Okay, you'll notice that I have my crown and joy, my better half with me today, my wife, Erica. And we've been going through this book called Philippians. And we've gone about 6 or 7 weeks, and this has been an awesome study. We're learning about how to have an indestructible joy in our life. And as I've studied this book, I've watched a lot of sermons from other churches, as what I do when you kind of study a whole series. And I saw this one church that did this thing on Philippians 2, where a husband and wife got up there and saw Philippians 2 through the lens of marriage. And so I pitched it to my better half, my crown and joy, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Do you want to try this?" And she's like, "Yeah, let's try that." I'm like, "Okay, I do this every week, but you don't do this often. You want to do this?" Yeah, let's do it. That'll be fun. She said. And so here we are, and we're still married, and we have this joint sermon together where we want to see Philippians chapter 2, which all talks about humility of Christ, and seeing that through the lens of marriage. And so even if you're not married today, this will have application for all relationships. As we kind of dive in specifically, it'll apply generally in all of our relationships. And so, Erica, why don't you tell them a little bit about us.
Yeah, so some of you already know our story, but some of you don't. So we're just going to go into a few little facts. Brent and I have been married for nearly 24 years now. I informed Brent yesterday that that's nearly a quarter of a century that we've been married, which seems like a really long time.
One of us gets a medal. I think it's probably you. So.
We've been in full-time vocational ministry for nearly 22 years. And we have 2 children, Caleb and Leah. Caleb is nearly 20 and Leah is nearly 18, which makes them really not kids or children. They're really young adults living in our house. We often get asked about how we met, and it's just a bit of a more complicated story. We've kind of always known one another in a sense. We grew up in a small town in Nova Scotia where the Christian community was small as well. And actually, our grandparents were friends. And then our parents became friends. I think our dads maybe went to high school together. And maybe
this was not an arranged marriage, though.
It sounded like that, isn't it?
Does.
And then our siblings and we became friends kind of into our teen years. And actually, we kind of concluded, my mom made Brent's birthday cakes when he was younger. Our parents, our moms had a small business together.
That's true.
And
they're watching right now, by the way.
And all of our siblings, or most of them, were in one another's weddings. So that's how connected our families are. So Brent and I started dating just after high school when we were youth leaders in our church youth group. The final and most important thing you need to know about us is that we are up here today, but we do not have it all together. We might look like we have it all together, or that it might be assumed by our role, but we want you to know that that's not true. There's nothing that qualifies us to be up here talking to you today about marriage except for the grace of God. And we have stumbled toward getting some of these things right. But it's definitely been a process for us, and we have to choose to love every day, just like you guys. I like what John Mark Comer says in his book, Loveology. He says that marriage is 2 broken people coming together to find healing in Jesus.
Yeah, we're not complete. We're not whole. There's just something wrong with all of us. It's this sin problem that we all have. And we're broken people on a journey to find healing in Jesus. And Erica reminded me of this Casting Crowns song where there's a line in there, it's the only way we'll last forever is if we're broken together. And maybe you want to YouTube that this afternoon to find some maybe even healing in your own marriage relationship. It's just a really good song that Casting Crowns sings. We're not perfect. We're not perfect, and you're not perfect. And if you understand that, it makes marriage flow a lot better. Okay, so play along with me if you've heard this pivotal story from my childhood, because some people have not heard this pivotal story from my childhood. When I was in grade 7, I was really small. I hit my growth spurt late in life, and all my friends around me hit their growth spurts early, and so like the guys usually had like 75, 100 pounds on me, and all the girls were a lot bigger than me too, and so I was really insecure about this, and I did like Taekwondo, and I tried to lift weights, I tried to be really tough and macho and stuff, and in grade 7, we had this really big teacher, Mr. Steves, and he was a big football guy, and he didn't want to teach that day because sometimes teachers are like that. And so he said, "Let's have an arm wrestling competition." I said, "Oh dear Lord, no!" And so guys over here, girls over here, and he does a little chalkboard thing, and we're keeping tally, and you know, best guy, best girl. And so I'm losing all the time in these arm wrestling matches, and I'm just getting embarrassed and really insecure. And one of these matches where I just lose miserably in an arm wrestling match, I look across and I see this cute girl, and I think that she's giggling and laughing at me. And I, in a moment of sheer brilliance, decided to open my mouth, and I screamed across the room, "What are you laughing at?" Okay, watch this. "I can beat you. You're just a girl." Oh yeah, that came out of my mouth. And then when it came out of my mouth, I was like, "No!" And it was too late. The whole class went, "What?" Oh, it's on. And so I got down with this cute girl, and I held her hand, and then I was like, "Oh, dear Lord, please help me to win this. I can't lose this." And it was like, you know, the old Star Trek where Captain Kirk calls down to Scotty, an engineer, and "I need more power." "I'm giving it all I've got, Captain." And you're like, "I got nothing here." And then boom, I lose. I lose this arm wrestling match to this cute girl. And the point, the main thing of that story that everyone just loves to tell, I don't know why people want to hear this aspect of the story, is that the cute girl in the story that I lost the arm wrestling to is the girl sitting right next to me. So this table is here because I am going to prove to you that I can beat her in an arm wrestling match now, okay? And men, I tell her that I let her win because I won in the end. So take some notes on that, okay? But the reason I tell that funny story is because that sometimes marriage can feel like a bit of an arm wrestling match when it shouldn't. And it can get on those lesser details like the covers, pulling the covers this way, pulling the covers that way. The thermostat, you know, that we all know, there's someone that pumps it up and the other one that pushes it down. You know, is the toaster gonna go on the counter or under the counter? Where in the counter is it gonna go? Or my favorite is some people squeeze the toothpaste from the top of the tube and normal human beings squeeze it from the bottom of the tube, right? Yeah, okay. But those are kind of lesser things, but then it can get even more intense in an arm wrestling match in your marriage when you talk about money. When you talk about raising kids and discipline, or how are you going to spend your holidays, or how much time you spend on your hobbies, or things like that. So it can get a little bit more intense, but it doesn't have to be that way. And Paul, in Philippians chapter 1, which we saw, I think, on week 2 of this, he gives this beautiful picture of Christian relationships, and it fits perfectly with marriage. And it's this image, this athletic image of striving together as one. Because there's not a lot of joy when an arm wrestling match, but there's a lot more joy when it's striving together as one.
So does anyone here enjoy pickleball as much as I do? Look at the hands. I love it, love it, love it. So I've convinced Brent to come out with me a few times to play. But there's a couple in our church, Cyril and Amy Turton. I'm going to call you right out. They gave us permission.
Pickleheads, we'll call them.
They're pickleheads, yeah. And they love pickleball, and they're trying to convert everyone over to this sport. So if you haven't been approached about it yet, if you see them coming, you can run if you want to. It's okay. But they've asked us to come out and play a few times, and they're pretty tough to beat. But they're also very fun to beat. And that's because Cyril has this slightly condescending / evil giggle that he pulls out when he gets a point. And it's, of course, all in good fun. We take no offense. But the only way to stop them from getting the points is if we work together. Yeah, right?
we beat them once.
Yeah, okay.
I think they let us.
We at least got some points on them. Yeah. And so we're going to go with the points thing. And we got some points, but But they were probably taking it easy on us. We do realize that because they saw us trying so hard. But that's kind of an even better image of marriage, right?
Working together.
It's working together, striving together as one rather than in competition with one another. And there's a lot more joy when you see yourself playing on the same team as your spouse. Brett and I actually like to make sure we remind one another of this during our kind of more heated conversations, that we are on the same team and we want the same thing.
Yeah, Cyril and Amy are a great example of striving together as one, both on and off the pickleball court. But today we're going to look at Philippians chapter 2, this very famous chapter in the Bible, through the lens of marriage, as we talk about steps towards a joy-filled marriage and striving together as one. This paradoxical, joyful process of going from me to we. So Erica's going to read our 11 verses in our text here today.
All right, Philippians 2, 1-11. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but to each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
And so what we want to do here is we just want to talk about 3 steps towards a joy-filled marriage. It involves understanding 3 things: our union with Christ together as a couple, our humility of Christ that's modeled for us, and being on mission for Christ. And so let's jump into that, the union with Christ. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ. So marriage is a covenant, not a contract. It's till death do us part. And in this covenant relationship, there are 3 people in this relationship, the till death do us part relationship. One of them is perfect, and 2 of them are not. 2 of them are broken, right? We talked about that. And if we understand this dynamic, it helps save a lot of potential problems in our marriage. And Eric and I, we always talk about this whenever we talk to someone about the marriage, whether it's premarital counseling or whether someone comes to us and wants to talk about marriage. It's this thing called a triangle. And we must have talked about this so much at our previous church that there was this one young girl that got married, and she actually tattooed this thing to her arm. And I'm like, well, this isn't the 67th book of the Bible, but anyway, nonetheless, there's just this excellent dynamic that we need to understand in marriage. There's husband and wife at the bottom, and if you're going to try and find this completeness and wholeness with each other without involving Christ, it's going to be extremely hard, if not difficult. But it's only as 2 broken individuals find their completion in Christ, only 2 broken individuals pursue Christ, that they actually get closer together. If we try and we stand apart and we try to fix this problem without bringing Christ into the whole equation, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible. But as 2 people humbly walk towards Christ, they'll find themselves getting closer together. And so this triangle is a perfect way to understand this whole covenant relationship. Because in our society today, there's this false understanding of romantic relationships, that you can find some sort of completion in another individual. And it's idolatry in romantic relationships. And it's exemplified in that movie, that old movie that Tom Cruise is in, Jerry Maguire, where he looks into this supermodel's face on top of the Empire State Building, and he says, "You complete me," right? The only one that can complete you. You got to understand this. The only one that can complete you is not another human being. It is Christ. Christ is the only one that can complete us. Because if I think that another individual can complete me, eventually that infatuation stage runs out, like we all know it, and then she squeezes the toothpaste from the top, and I squeeze it from the bottom, and she no longer completes me, right? No, on top of that, Timothy Keller in his book, Counterfeit Gods, talks about how the idolatry of romantic relationships. And he's saying, if all of your meaning and significance and purpose and value and everything comes from another human being without Christ, eventually, one or the other is going to be looking at them in a coffin. And then what? You've buried your Savior, right? And not to say that there's not going to be any grief. There should be grief because you've loved lots. But we got to understand there's three people in this relationship. One is perfect, two are broken, and they find their healing in Christ. And as we individually pursue Christ, that's when we'll draw closer together. And you found this other illustration helpful in this.
Yeah. So I like to think of this triangle as kind of like a Chinese finger trap. There's a picture of it on the screen. I don't know if you've ever used one of these, but we're going to mix illustrations here a little bit. When you put both of your fingers in the tube on either side of that Chinese finger traps, it's designed that when you pull, which is kind of our natural response is to pull outwards, the trap tightens and it traps you. It's only when you push your fingers together towards one another that you can be released from the trap. And I guess the point is, it's whatever the issue you're facing in marriage, it's like both sides putting their fingers in that trap. The more you pull, the worse it gets. And the more you push together and push in towards Christ and one another, you feel less trapped.
As you work your way up that triangle.
Yeah.
It's less. And so understanding these three people in the relationship is the most important thing, and that there's two that are not perfect, that one is perfect. So let's get really practical here. What does this mean? I can't stress this enough. As a couple, be in church together. There couldn't be a better way to exemplify that triangle than a husband and a wife sitting in church together, where for an hour and 15 minutes of your week, you're not talking with one another. The only thing that's coming out of your mouth is you're exalting the name of Jesus. You're talking about this grander narrative from Philippians 2 that we just said, Jesus is all, Jesus is all, Jesus is all. And then you sit there for 35 minutes and you're not speaking, you're letting Jesus speak. I know it's an imperfect vessel, me speaking, but we're letting the Word of God speak into the situation. And I wish you could see it from my perspective some Sunday mornings. Can I stand up? I'm going to get preachy. I wish you could see it from my perspective some Sunday mornings. And I've told some people this, is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes all I can explain to it is like the movie The Matrix, where everything slows down. And I'm seeing everything outside and everything slows down. I can see the words that I'm saying, and I can see the words that I'm saying in the future and in the past and how they all weld together. And then I can even see you guys. And it slows right down. And I wish you could see it sometime from my perspective. It's the spiritual realm. That's all I can say, where I see couples, and I can see it from the stage, where a hand goes like this, or a hand goes like this, or there's some look like, and I could see the work that's happening as these two individuals, I can see it in their hearts, draw closer together in the triangle. And so there's no better way to make this a model in your life than just to be in church on Sunday morning.
Yeah. I think that the next really important thing would be to pray for and with each other. And so to begin many days and to end many days, Brent and I will take a few moments to pray together. And we're learning that there's many advantages or benefits to this, just even outside of praying, pointing our eyes to Jesus. It's for one another as well. So what we realize is it's recognizing and acknowledging one another's struggles. It's a physical touch to show love and care. And it's listening to your spouse's heart as they talk to Jesus. And so there's this really great movie, The War Room. I really like it. It's a Christian movie. And
it's all about marriage.
It's all about marriage. It's perfect.
Prayer in marriage.
And it's just an excellent example of how prayer can transform your marriage. So if you haven't seen it, you should go home and watch that as well. Yeah. I don't need to get into the details of the movie, and I don't want to, but part of the movie, there's a scene in the movie where this younger woman is talking to this wiser, older woman, and she's frustrated with her husband. And she starts to rant to this older, wiser woman. But before she could get very far into her rant, the older, wiser woman stops her in her tracks and says something like this. How much time are we going to waste talking about your husband, and how much time are we going to spend talking to God? So that comes on pretty strong. The application to this is, are we going to our friends and family about our marital issues, or are we humbly taking them to the feet of Jesus and to one another? I find by doing that, by taking them to Jesus and to one another, that two things typically happen, sometimes one of the two, but God either gives us peace over the situation, or he inspires change in us or our spouse. But we ultimately need to remember to bring it to Jesus.
No horizontal triangulation, just vertical triangulation. Don't go to friends' Facebook or family with your issues. Unless you agree that, hey, we need to go to a counselor or something, that's okay too, right. Or a pastor or something like that, yeah. or some trusted person. But take it to Jesus. Okay, so our union with Christ, but let's talk about our humility of Christ, because that's the whole essence of this passage. Francis Chan, he says that verses 3 and 4 here in Philippians 2 are the most important verses in the entire Bible for marriage. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. And then he goes on to say, have the same mindset of Christ, who had everything in heaven with the Trinity and the Father in glory, and he made himself nothing. We know the Christmas story. We know the Good Friday story, the cross. And he died on the cross for us. It wasn't for him, it was for us. So dying to self and our relationships. And so that's what we're supposed to have in our marriage relationship.
Well, I like this quote about humility that Mark and Grace Driscoll write in their book, Real Marriage, The Truth About Sex, Friendship, and Life Together. I'm going to read it for you. Husbands and wives live on a continuum from selfish to servant. If a marriage is between two selfish people, it could be cold and functional. If a marriage is between a selfish person and a servant, the marriage will be selfish and abusive. And if the marriage is between two servants who are both pursuing Christ, just like that triangle, it will be increasingly uniting and satisfying.
And so we talked about this a few weeks ago. This probably the most leading psychologist in North America today, his name is John Gottman, and he spends millions of dollars and has all these PhDs studying relationships. And he studies what he calls the masters and disasters of relationships. You can watch all kinds of videos and read all kinds of books by this guy. And what I love is that all of his study from millions of dollars of research and all these PhDs confirm that the Bible is true. And so he studies what factors are part of relationships that will make it go long-term, is a master in relationship. What factors that are early on in a relationship that are there, if they're there, that will make them go long-term. And what factors, if you see them early in a relationship, are going to have that relationship not go long-term. It's going to end in disaster. And the top two signs, the top two factors that show that there'll be a master in relationships are these. The ability to mend and repair relationships, if that's early on. The ability, both sides, to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. And the emotional responsiveness to each other's needs. So let's talk about this, because both of that is confirmed here in Philippians 2. Look not only to your own interests, but the interests of others. Have that humility.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ability to mend and repair. For us, we have found that when one of us is hurt by the other, that starting the conversation out with, I feel like, versus you always or you never, is much more productive and opens the conversation up in a different way. As many of you know, Brent really enjoys golfing and hunting. And I mean that he can leave the house in a miserable mood and come back from doing one of these things feeling quite great. They charge him up and they make him feel really happy. And most days, I'm typically really happy when he can get out and do these things because I understand the stresses of his job. But when the kids were very small, this did cause a little bit of tension in our marriage, I have to admit. And not because I didn't want him to go do these things, but or that I needed him by my side all the time, but because these things were very time consuming. Golf has got to be the longest game ever created, and hunting has got to be at least second to that. Well, anyway, needless to say, as time went on, golf was becoming one of those four-letter words that I hated to hear, and a conversation was needed between the two of us. So I could have started the conversation with, "You're always gone, and you never spend time with me." Instead, after learning the hard way that approach probably wasn't going to get anywhere, I said to him, "I know you have a stressful job and you need to have activities that you enjoy. But is there a way that we can talk about and work on how these time-consuming hobbies affect the kids and I?" There. I just opened up a conversation rather than closing it down.
She's a master at crucial conversations, and she is. It's a God-given gift. And someone told us early in our relationship, start every conversation with, "I feel like," not, "you always, you never." You're just shutting it down. You just, right? "You always, I never." "I feel like when you do this, I feel like." And it's a great way to mend and repair relationships. I need to do this a lot, mend and apologize. So I've also learned that never start a conversation with, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Okay? "I'm sorry." That is the most passive-aggressive, cloaked humility comment that you can say. "I'm sorry that you down there feel that way," because if you're going to apologize, apologize. Own your junk. Own it. Own it. Apologize. Don't, I'm sorry you feel that way. No, that you're just putting that down on them. You're just trying to appear humble. And that's the best way to mend and repair relationships. Let's talk about emotional responsiveness.
Yeah, there's a line that's been huge for us in our communication in our marriage, and it's not what you say, it's what they hear. It's not what you say, it's what they hear. And this is where what's called the 5 love languages comes into play. I'm sure you've all heard of them. We're not going to get into them today too deeply, but they are a good picture of how we all give and receive love differently, and how we need to understand how our spouse receives and gives love. So the 5 love languages are acts of service, words of affection, quality time, physical touch, and gifts.
Yeah, and I think like a broken clock, I'm only right twice a day on this one, where I get that emotional responsiveness to my wife. But I've learned over the years that she works full-time to support us, and sometimes I can sense, and maybe husbands, you can sense this too, that she's coming home and she's probably a little stressed out, and she might be in a little bit of a bad mood. And one of the things I do know is that she doesn't like to see a dirty kitchen when she comes into the house. And I think there's a lot of ladies like that. I do the vacuuming and the garbage, and that's my thing. I'm a vacuum Nazi. I just love doing all that sort of stuff. But the kitchen is not my thing either. But I do know when she comes home and she's not in a good mood, and if mom ain't happy, ain't no one happy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And so, I see the pile of dishes in the sink, and I know she's coming home, and I will do those dishes, and because I know she's going to be looking in the kitchen, and if the dishes are full, she's going to be like, but if it's clean, she'd be like, that'll brighten her day. I also learned that she likes to give and receive gifts, and that's one of her love languages. So I try to surprise her once in a while with something that she's not expecting.
Yeah. For me, I've stumbled on this many times as well, and I continue to stumble, but it has to do with Brent's time and when's the best time for us to have conversations. So I've learned through experience that there are times, specific times during Saturdays and Sundays, that are just not the time that he wants to talk about our issues or really about dreams or any latest pickleball game or anything like that. He's very focused.
Don't bring me problems.
Don't bring you problems. Now, I guess I have a choice to make. I could continue on with my day as normal and let him deal with it and just bring those problems to him, and probably I won't get the response that I'm hoping for. Or I could have a heart of service to him and just do my best to adjust my day so that it gives him a little bit of space that he needs.
Yeah. So you have to figure that out for each other when it comes to that emotional responsiveness to each other's needs. And there's just one further application when it comes to the humility of Christ and not looking out to your own interests. And I'll be rather implicit here and not explicit. Okay, so you can read between the lines on this one. One of the most contentious issues in marriage is money, but the second one is, I like to call it applying Song of Songs, okay? If you haven't read Song of Songs, you go home this afternoon and you read it, and you'll be like, oh, that makes sense, okay? And so typically in a marriage relationship, there's one partner that likes to apply Song of Psalms quite often, and then there's another partner that likes to apply Song of Songs less frequently. And in a joy-filled marriage where both are dying to self, neither get what they want, right? And there's that old song, that country song, you start walking your way, I'll start walking mine, we'll meet in the middle on that old Georgia pine. And if both start walking towards one another, you'll be surprised when you lose your life, you actually find it, there's that joy. But if one side of that couple is like, no, you gotta walk all the way my way, you gotta walk all the way, that's a sign of a disaster waiting to happen. And I don't think we need to talk about what disaster that could look like. So if we both die to self on that issue, there is joy. How was that? Was I implicit, not explicit on that one?
Yeah, and I like the song.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's talk about mission for Christ, okay. Paul has this one short story of Jesus. We talked about this last week. There's just a short, condensed 1-minute version story of Jesus where he was in it with God and he came to this earth, he died on the cross, and then he's exalted to the resurrected state. And that story needs to kind of be the story in our mind that trumps all other story. That's to be our mission. And so this unchangeable ultimate reality that every knee is going to bow someday and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, and live with that grander narrative. And our lesser narrative, our story of our marriage, is to exemplify and amplify that grander narrative. We live for that narrative. Because here's what we've learned, is that when we have that grander narrative, that larger mission that we are living for, we fight less often. And when we're living with lesser narratives down here, we end up just getting into these persnickety fights and all that. But when we have this grander narrative, like you guys think, there is a God who loves us. He came to this earth. He died on the cross for us, and he's coming back. And that's the ultimate true narrative that we need to live our lives for. We have a lot less conflict in our marriage.
Do you remember that movie, The War Room, the Christian movie, The War Room, I just mentioned earlier, where the older, wiser woman was counseling the younger woman? At the end of the movie, the older woman gives a super passionate and amazing prayer. And she says this, "Give me another one, Lord. Guide me to who you want me to help." Well, that quote captures it for us. For us, if we're in ministry or not, we never turn that off. Many of the warmer months, and in the colder months we go to the Tri-Leisure, but in the warmer months we'll walk around our neighborhood quite often in the evenings. And it's those conversations we have on those walks that is really pivotal for us. It allows us to connect with people that we might not have had the opportunity to connect with before. And it opens doors to new ways that we can serve them. Also, when, throughout the years, we've had many people in our home, and it's kind of funny because our kids' question to us through the week was, who's coming over today? Not, is anybody coming over today? And so we felt having people in our home fulfilled our mission of serving others.
And Erica won't tell us about herself, but she has this gift of discernment, and so she can see how things are going to play out. And so sometimes she'll talk to me. This is off script, by the way. Sometimes she'll talk to me and say, I was up on stage leading worship, and so-and-so, there's something wrong. You got to contact so-and-so. And she won't leave me alone. She's like, did you contact so-and-so? Did you contact so-and-so? There's something wrong with so-and-so. Or there's something going on in their life. And sure enough, I'll be like, fine, I'll talk to them. I call them, and sure enough, there's something there. And so we see that as, her gift using with me as a team on mission to be able to pray for and able to identify things. But it's not just in our marriage, it's in our family. Being on mission as a family with our kids as well, and helping them live in this grander mission, this ultimate reality that there's a God who loves us, sent Jesus, died on the cross, he's coming back again someday. And no matter where we are in the highways and byways of life, that we have to live that. So I got my son involved in sports, played baseball, I coached it, hockey, I coached it, and he wanted to play lacrosse, and so I got him involved in lacrosse. And I never played lacrosse, but I did the thing where I'll put my hand up and volunteer, and then next thing I know, I'm head coach. And any father, I did that. And so here I am, never played this on YouTube, and I'm trying to figure it out. And so we did all right that year. And we got to the finals that year in lacrosse in New Brunswick, and I was head coach, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And my son, he wasn't the all-star player. He was probably like a third liner. And so as a father, maybe you felt this if you coached, like you're trying to fight, or you should fight the nepotism in your own heart, like not putting him out there for the power play and the penalty kill. And so I didn't. I was fighting that the whole time. And like, he's not the best player. We're gonna put him out there third time. But in the final match of the game of the championship, we ended up losing 7-1, but my son scored the only goal. Okay? I was like, yeah, don't cheer too hard. Yeah, right on. Like, he scored the goal. And then, and it was like 1-1, and we were like, okay, maybe we can win this. And then it was like a landslide. They just scored 7 goals, and we ended up losing. But I, as the coach, had to choose the most valuable player for the team. Okay, so what did I do? I defaulted to my 2 assistant coaches. I said, my son scored it. Nepotism, I know who I'm going to choose right away, right? And you guys choose it. And they chose the goalie. And in my heart, I'm thinking, you mean the reason we lost the game? And that's the inside voice. The outside voice is, this is amazing. That's a great choice. Give it to the sieve. Right, that's right. Yeah. Not the one who put points on the board, but couldn't keep it anyway. But that's what you're fighting on the inside. Every father's been there at the hockey game. I've seen it. Some of you can control it, some of you can't. And in the end, I had to say, we're not here to play lacrosse. Lacrosse is secondary, tertiary to the grander vision, this grander narrative. And what's most important is modeling Jesus even in our disappointments in life. And I had to have this conversation with my son. Hey, you're not going to play lacrosse the rest of your life. Sorry. You're not going to make it pro. But we're here to live for a grander narrative here. And it's all about modeling Jesus in these relationships. Because I don't want to make a big sting and then you ruin your testimony, right? So it's all about this triangle, living for this grander narrative of Jesus and pursuing Christ as 2 broken people. So why don't we review these?
Yeah, so we're going to finish up and just review some of the steps that we went over today towards a joy-filled marriage. It involves understanding these 3 things: union with Christ, humility of Christ, and mission for Christ. Yeah.
And so at the end of Philippians 2, which we didn't read, there is another section where Paul gives 2 examples of 2 people who live out these principles. He talks about Timothy and Epaphroditus. And so when it comes to marriage, I want to ask us this question: what Christian couple models this? Is there a Christian couple that you know that models this? Maybe you're just a few years into marriage, or maybe you've been doing this for 20 plus years like us, and you've got it wrong, right, wrong, right. You got a few more rights than wrongs going on. And here's what I would say. If you're one of those that are early in this stage, ask some of those couples that you think are modeling this imperfectly, though, hey, can we do coffee? Can we chat about some of these things? And we did that.
Yeah, we did just that. There was a couple in our church who we really looked up to. They had older grown kids who were in ministry, and we just saw something in them that we thought we would want to ask about. So we met with them for coffee a few times and chatted about marriage and life. And it was awesome. It was perfect. It was really what we needed. And then we had this happen to us on the flip side, where a couple approached us about kind of mentoring them through their marriage and young children.
Yeah, and so if marriage feels a bit more like an arm wrestling match and less like a pickleball striving together as one. Maybe you need to chat with someone. We'd love to chat with all of you, but we wouldn't have time to chat with all of you. So let's encourage some cross-pollination here. If you see someone who is modeling this, hey, can we chat? Just once or twice. And sometimes it just takes one or two conversations. And to have those, and it can be an amazing conversation. And it works best when somebody as a mentoree asks someone else up rather than somebody from up going, hey, I need to mentor you. It works amazing if you go up and say, hey, you know what? I see something in your life I'd love to learn. If you're new here and you don't know anyone and you're one of those early on couples that you want to connect with someone, in your bulletin, there's this QR code. You can click on that, and then you can fill out this form and say, hey, I'd like to connect with someone. And if you are a couple that maybe you've got more rights than wrongs, you stumbled towards getting these things, and you'd be saying, I'd be willing to connect with one of those younger couples, fill out that form. There's a jot form there. And what Pastor Karen and I are doing, we're going to do maybe some eHarmony. We're going to connect some of these couples together. And there'll be some great cross-pollination that happens there. But it happens best when it's organic, when you just go, you know what, hey, I would love to can we do coffee? You'd be surprised how fruitful that is.
Thanks for listening to this week's message from Spruce Grove Alliance Church. For more information or to hear past messages, please visit sgac.net.